Hey guys, welcome to another ManOn2nd podcast. I'm Mike Sunbay, joined as always by the GOAT himself, Joe Fasaro. And today we have another special guest. Joe, you want to give us an introduction to our special guest?
Yeah, we're excited. We got Steve Carney, and Steve, God, we go way back. People may not know in another lifetime, my South Florida people may not realize I worked 9 years at the Tampa Tribune, the late great newspaper. A few of us are still hanging on, doing stuff, and I used to cover the Bucks over there, and as ManOn2nd is growing with a state of Florida kind of angle, and with Tampa Bay Rays doing so well, they're definitely under our umbrella. An organization we want to talk about as we go, and hope to have Steve on a few more times. But for now, I felt he would be a great guest. The Marlins just played up there last weekend. He saw the Marlins play. Obviously, the Rays are going to the postseason. They're fighting for the first seed in the AL. Looks like they'll get that and then try to get in the best shape they can if they get to the World Series, and hope the NL West is eliminated so they have home field if they get to the World Series. But Steve, great to have you on. Steve is the publisher of stpete9.com, and he's does the Under the Orange Roof podcast. Steve, welcome. First, let people know how they could reach you, and then we'll get this show on the road.
Yep, I am at Steve Carney on social media. Very, very original. And again, all my work is at stpete9.com. It's ST Pete, and then you can either use the word 9 or the number 9. They both go to the same spot. I bought both websites when I started it. I was like, I probably need to get both of those. And the podcast is at UTOR Podcast.
Yeah, great. Everyone give that a follow. And Mike, what do we got going today?
First, I think we should talk about a couple days ago was the anniversary of Jose Fernandez passing. It's now 5 years since Jose Fernandez tragically died in the boating accident, and Steve's a great person to have to talk about this because for many people that probably know or don't know, Jose, when he left Cuba, first went to Tampa and played high school ball there. Obviously, got drafted by the Marlins, had a great short career with the Marlins before tragically passing. So what do both of you guys remember and love about Jose and the impact that he had on the game, both in Tampa and obviously, Joe, you covered his career in Miami?
Yeah, I'll start, Steve. This one really hits home. Jose, for everyone that knew him, just really touch our hearts, and he moved you. And the tragedy, and of course, 2 others passed in that tragic boating accident. We want to remember and give respect to everyone impacted by that. And Jose Fernandez, the baseball player, was as dynamic, electric, and exciting a player as I think any journalist or any fan that ever saw him play. Just the it factor, just an amazing generational type talent. A guy who was on his way to being the face of, certainly one of the main faces of baseball. The confidence off the charts. I think people don't really realize, because I remember meeting him when after they drafted him in 2011, which is also the 10th. This year is also the 10th year that the Marlins drafted him out of Alonzo High School in Tampa, and Jose, just when you saw him originally, when first time I saw him pitch was in high A ball. He got promoted there, just moved up the system, just flew through it. I remember talking to him, and his English was great. And when the interview ended, I was like, Jose, how long have you been speaking English? He goes, oh, I self-taught myself. And people, anyone who knew Jose, there was nothing he didn't feel he could accomplish. And I remember after his Rookie of the Year season, he went on this exercise kick of bike riding. And he wouldn't just ride the bike. He was riding like a major Tour de France-like guy, going like 120, 140 miles a day. And he'd post all that on Twitter. And then it got me here in Southwest Broward. I bought a bicycle, basically because of Jose. And I got my wife one as well. And we'd ride a lot. And we rode because of Jose. And the late, great Juan Rodriguez, who worked at the Sun Sentinel, I remember I was riding the bike in Weston one time. I bumped into Juan. He was riding, and they said, Juan, what are you doing? And by this point, Juan was fighting, with cancer. that ultimately claimed his life in 2016 as well. He was like, oh, because of Jose, and I remember we'd talk bike riding with Jose. And one time I'd sit around before I went to a game, I'd ride my bike like about 10 miles, which for an old guy, I thought I did pretty good. I go, yeah, Jose, I rode this morning. He goes, would you? I said, I did 10 miles. He goes, oh, I should have done 20. And I'm like, that SOB. And then
Fair.
next day I rode, I was doing 20 because Jose just had that way of wanting you to really push yourself. And what an amazing talent. And people, 2013 was his rookie year. Mm-hmm. That Marlins team lost exactly 100 games. He went 12-6, I believe it was, won the rookie of the year, and they won 18 of his 28 starts. So just think of that. When you lost 100 games, so do the math, 62 wins, and he had 18 of those wins were when he took the mound. And that just doesn't happen much. And he just very sad. And again, sometimes it's hard for me to talk about because it moved you so much. And then the circumstances of his death and everything are so tragic. The ending's always going to be that. But I think, and people like you, Mike, young guy who grew up in Jose, was just a different level. But Steve, obviously, what he meant to the Tampa Bay area, and just the magnanimous
he certainly did. I mean, we caught him as a very young, guy that was just learning his way in the world, coming from Cuba, coming to Tampa and pitching at Alonzo High School here in Tampa, and was a guy that if you knew he was pitching that night, if I wasn't at a Rays game, I would want to go to Alonzo. And Alonzo for me is kind of a hike. It's on the other side of Tampa, so it's probably 35 to 45 minutes away of a drive for me to go. But I would go and watch if he was pitching, and I knew he was pitching that night because you had heard all this stuff about this Cuban kid who came to town with the big smile. And I mean, you guys know how big of a magnanimous personality Jose was in Miami. He was just that way as a 17-year-old. I mean, you saw this kid was going to be a star, and it didn't matter if he was going to be a star in baseball or a star in business or a star in showbiz. Was he going to get into television? Was he going to go make telenovelas somewhere? Because he had that look. I mean, he could have been, a soap opera star with that mug and the smile that he would give. He'd have girls at the high school lined up, down the right field line waiting for him after the game. When he got drafted in 2011, I remember I was sitting at the Trop because we always did the first night of the draft in the building, and I remember going through and seeing Jose's name there, and I'm like, can he get to 24? Because that's where the Rays were first. That was their first pick. The Rays had 10 picks in the first 70, and the first one wasn't until 24. And it was like, if Jose, I was praying to God. I'm like, can God just please let Jose fall to 24? Knowing it wasn't going to happen because you knew just how special of a guy he was. And maybe the most amazing thing that I saw from his time in Miami, and I saw his first start when he came to Tampa, when he came to St. Pete and pitched at Tropicana Field, there was always a packed house to watch him play. Even if the Rays weren't any good or the Marlins weren't any good, there was still a lot of people there because they wanted to see Jose Fernandez. But maybe the most amazing thing that I ever saw Jose Fernandez do, he turned Barry Bonds into a likable character. I mean, just from him putting his arm around Barry, you would see Barry when you can make Barry Bonds light up and seem like a human being, you've done something. You're a special person.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being at the game when the draft was going on. The Marlins were playing at home, and they announced him on the jumbotron at what was it called back then? The Dolphin Stadium, whatever they had it called back then. Pro player.
Just call it Joe Robbie.
Joe Robbie, yeah. Well, that was before I was born, but
God, now I feel old.
I remember as Dolphin Stadium or Land Shark, I think it was. And they announced the draft pick on the jumbotron, and even that small crowd was really excited just from having a Cuban being drafted by the Marlins, and you could tell he was really going to connect with the community.
Yeah, just
but
amazingly 5 years, and
I can't believe it's been 5 years, Joe.
Yeah. It's insane.
It seems like I remember watching MLB Network and them breaking into coverage and going, Jose Fernandez has died, and I just went. I mean, I'm sitting there just, oh my God.
yeah.
And obviously you were at Marlins Park a couple of nights later with all of everything that went on, everybody wearing the 16, and then of course, I just watched it the other night on YouTube, watching D. Gordon's home run off of Bartolo Colon, and even now, like, I'm sitting here with you and I'm getting choked up thinking about that moment. It's so special.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the most interesting sporting events I've ever been to. I went to the game as a fan, and like it was just like a mix of like, it felt like a playoff baseball game, it felt like a funeral, it felt like a party, it felt like it was like so many different emotions at once. It was probably one of the most surreal moments as a sports fan.
Yeah, and I tell you this as someone who covered it, and guys when you're around these guys and you see and you're confronted with something like that, you don't wish that on any organization. And I know it's happened to several, and that was just a dark day, and just I try to remember just all the joy that he brought, because I think Tom Angley used that word right. He brought a joy to baseball, and his legacy lives on, and I just remember then even knowing, and people would say it and you didn't want to believe it, but just how much that would set the Marlins franchise back. You knew it would. You wanted to believe otherwise, and you wanted to believe it could weather it, but it really set the Marlins franchise way back.
Could you imagine what the South Florida community would have been like during the pandemic if Jose was here? I think that there would have been a lot more hope. There would have been a lot more of, he would have taken a leadership role in making sure that everybody was going to be okay getting through this pandemic, and for him not to be there, it's just just devastating.
But there's so much that it could have impacted. But again, we loved them, and we hate the circumstances, and pray for all that were impacted, and we move on to remember
and smile at the memories. I mean, every time I think of Jose Fernandez, I smile because he was you get that big smile, and you think of all the silly things they did. Like, I remember him sitting in the dugout, and Evan Longoria had hit a massive home run off of him at Marlins Park, and you just see him and you see him in the dugout, and he's yelling at Longo. He's like, "You didn't have to hit it that far." And Longo is laughing. He's like, "You grooved it in there. I'm gonna hit it." So I mean, he was the first to let him play. Yeah. And I remember he and Bryce Harper loved it, and they had exchanges. Like, they were both like, "Hey, look, you hit it off me, you can bat flip. I strike you out, I could laugh at it, Mm-hmm. And I never saw a guy just take so much joy wanting to humiliate a batter as much as Jose Fernandez. He didn't want to strike you out, he wanted to make you look stupid, and he did to a lot of hitters. He just made the game look. He made pitching and the game look so easy. But Mike, we'll shift gears a little bit and
to more positive stuff.
A little more perspective.
The Rays just won the division. They clinched versus the Marlins, right? That was a couple nights ago versus the Marlins. They clinched the division. Two teams going in pretty opposite directions. Marlins trying to avoid last place. Rays most likely are favorites, one of the favorites in the AL to reach the World Series again. What do you guys think these two clubs, like Joe, like what can the Marlins do to get to that Rays level? Because after a playoff appearance last year, which we kind of can agree that it was probably a fluke, the Marlins are flirting with 100 losses. I think they might just miss it. How do they get to that point where the Rays are right now?
Yeah, it's real interesting, Mike. Last year, obviously, we could say shortened season, 60 games. The Marlins really seized that. They kind of ran with that. Bottom feeder was their kind of mantra, and just teams took them lightly. They end up going, 31-29. They get into the playoffs. They win 2 in Wrigley and beat, to sweep the Cubs. Then they go to play the Braves. I think the series is in Houston, and get swept in 3 and kind of got blown out the deeper that series went. So, you could sit around and go small sample size, this, that, and the other thing. On the flip side, Tampa Bay won the division in the 60 games and went to the World Series, lost in 6 to the Dodgers. And here they are when we see the measure of 162. And the Marlins went one way. The Rays are flirting with 100 wins. And they have going to probably have the best record in the American League and maybe the second or third best record in baseball this year. With what I like to talk to Steve about as we kind of look at the directions is, yes, everyone talks about the Rays way or the Rays, what's their secret sauce or whatnot. I have some thoughts on what I think the Marlins should do, but I like your thoughts on what the Rays, why they're able to turn their roster over, why they're able to draft and develop and sign and develop like basically nobody, maybe the Dodgers do it at that level, but nobody else really besides those two seem to know how to get everything they can out of their organization.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Dodgers being able to do it, and that's because Andrew Friedman, who runs the Dodgers organization, came from Tampa Bay. And it's amazing to see how much influence around the league right now the Rays have in other organizations, whether it's Andrew Friedman in Los Angeles, James Click, who is the GM in Houston, is from the Rays. Chaim Bloom, who's the chief baseball officer in Boston, came from the Rays. Matt Arnold, who is the number 2 guy in Milwaukee, came from the Rays. I mean, there is a lot of Rays influence around this league. And I think the Marlins are in a spot where they're doing a lot of the things that the Rays did. The first thing that the Rays did is they knew that they needed to draft and develop pitching because, as Andrew Friedman told me a long time ago, now over a decade ago, he said, if we have to get on the free agent market and compete for pitching, we are going to be dead. So we know that the most important thing for us is that we have to draft and develop good pitching and elite pitching. And they've been able to do that for now close to 15 years. You look at David Price with James Shields, with Matt Garza, with Blake Snell, with Alex Cobb, with all these guys that they've been able to get, and they've been able to use those pieces to look both short term and long term. When they make these deals, and you go all the way back to the David Price trade in 2014. That trade, they got 2 pieces that were for the present. They got Drew Smyly and they got Nick Franklin, and they got a piece from the future, and that was Willie Adames, who is a huge, I think, the biggest piece of the 3. And so all of these trades that they've made, they've been as close to even as possible. I don't think you can say, apart from the trade of Chris Archer to Pittsburgh, that there has been a trade where the Rays have fleeced somebody. When they traded David Price, the team that got David Price, Detroit, got something that they needed. Same thing with James Shields. Same thing with Blake Snell. I really do think that the piece that they've been able to do is they've been able to draft and develop pitching and use that pitching to help get them extra, all the talent that you see hitting wise. That's the one thing the Rays haven't done a whole lot of is draft and develop hitters. Now, Wander Franco, that's another story. That's an incredible freak of a young human being, a 20-year-old that plays like he's a 15-year veteran. But I really do think that it starts with pitching, and the Marlins I think are set up in a very good way with Alcantara, with Lopez, with getting Luzardo in the trade for Starling Marte. I really like all 3 of those guys. The guy I like the most, though, is Sixto Sanchez. I really think, and I've been on the record saying this, Sixto Sanchez to me has the talent to win a Cy Young Award, and I think that he will win a Cy Young Award as a Miami Marlin. I think he is that talented of a pitcher, and I think that he can do everything that you need to do to be a top of the rotation guy, to go along with a top of the rotation guy like you have in Alcantara. But that's the first start.
Yeah, interesting, Steve. Points about pitching, and you're spot on. And I'm an advocate of the Marlins have finally put themselves in position with pitching. And what kind of one of my messages now is don't trade it. But you know now it doesn't mean that it doesn't get to the point where you get a Pablo to trade because you have another guy in the wing. Mm-hmm. But I think that I really like the pitching. I probably don't like it as much as some of the others in our market, and it's not because of the talent. It's because They haven't logged the innings yet, and there's some injury risk. And Trevor Rogers is a guy who's immensely talented. This year he got his feet wet over 162. He missed about a month and a half. He had some personal family and situations to deal with as well, a little minor injury, but he has to kind of step up. He can. Sandy Alcantara is earning himself a paycheck, and more power to him.
He's so good.
And
he really is incredible.
5 strikeouts away from 200 strikeouts. And I think innings themselves are undervalued, and so I love Sandy for that. Pablo, does great, but he hasn't pitched in the second half, and he has injury history. Sixto, who you mentioned, will be coming back off of surgery. Yeah. And I love Sixto, and you know what? He's the one guy, at least mound presence and performance and electric stuff, that kind of has a little bit of Jose in him, where, he has some flair on the mound. He brings that personality. He has that, and you love that in the pitcher, because the hitter really wants to get a hit off you because they don't like you to be shown up, and it creates this natural drama too. Even if you have, 2 last place teams, if you have Sixto Sanchez, up against, Bryce Harper or whatever, you're watching that showdown, because you want to see how they respond, and they're going to put on a show. And I agree, and I hope that, it's just health. The Marlins and Jake Eater, they got the steal of the 2020 draft, who's probably been their best pitching prospect. I make no bones about it. I respect the Baseball America, the pipelines, and all their lists. I have my own list and my own people I talk to, and we've been saying it from day one and back in spring that Jake Eater was their best pitching prospect, and he was up at Double-A and just got Tommy John surgery, so it takes him out of the equation for 2022. So that's going to be key. But you're right, and I think that can't be reinforced enough, especially when you play in a pitcher's ballpark like Lone Depot Park, now formerly Marlins Park, that you better have that really sound starting pitching. Yep. And on the flip side, with the Rays' magic formula, and why I think if the Rays don't win it all this year, I think in the next year or two, they may be better situated to win, because they kind of they've been bullpenning it, losing Glass now this year. Archer hasn't really been healthy. It traded Rich Hill. The guys that were in the opening day rotation aren't there, but you got, what's his name? Shane Baz, number 1 prospect in their system, goes with about 100. He's there. And in the wings, you got this kid, and now in high A ball, named Taj Bradley, who's not a top 100 prospect, but believe me, on some list, but he's a top 100 prospect.
Oh yeah, we definitely know all about Taj here with the Rays. My friend Neil Solons, who is the pregame and postgame show host, raves about Taj Bradley. And you mentioned Shane Baz. There's a couple of other guys that I certainly think need to be addressed. Cole Wilcox, who they got in the Blake Snell trade, is another guy that they're very high on as well. I believe he's at Double-A. And so they really do. And again, it's all about making sure that if you are looking to move pieces, and there's going to come a point where the ownership group in Miami is going to look to move some of these guys. You got to make sure that you're selling high, and you got to make sure that you've got to find a willing buyer. Like, I don't think the Rays would have moved Blake Snell this last offseason if the Padres hadn't blown the doors off of Eric Neander with the trade, getting Francisco Mejia, getting Luis Patino, getting a catcher in Blake Hunt that's going to be their catcher of the future as well, and Wilcox. They got all 4 of those pieces just for Blake Snell, and you saw what they gave up for Yu Darvish a couple of days later. You're thinking AJ Preller oversold on Blake Snell and got a deal on Yu Darvish.
Yeah, and look where they are. If you go to the offseason, everyone had San Diego going deep into the playoffs, challenging the Dodgers and Tampa Bay. How could you trade Blake Snell? And, it just goes to show you got to kind of, give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt that these organizations and Tampa Bay's got enough track record to know, and your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I just want to move it over to the farm system. This is someone I want to talk about, especially with Steve, is Jesus Sanchez, the guy that came from the Tampa organization in a trade with the Marlins. He's starting to come on with the power over the past couple weeks. He's put on a show a couple times. You'll see him hit Stanton like bombs in Miami. So what do you feel him as he graduated from where he was with Tampa to where he is now in Miami?
Yeah, I think that they found a good spot for him. Jesus Sanchez, I have known since he was 19. He was in low A ball, going to Bowling Green. The first time I saw him in spring training, he was a little skinny kid that was running all over the place on the backfields. And then 2 years later, he got into a couple of Grapefruit League games, and he had put on some weight. And I'm like, who is this Jesus Sanchez? And where was the skinny kid I saw on the backfields, and which got laughs from everybody? I really think that, power wise, he's great. I mean, you saw the barehanded catch the other night at Lone, earlier this week at Lone Depot Park. That's Sanchito for you. I really do think that I think he's a guy that's got a lot of power and cannon for an arm. He's going to be a great right fielder.
He's just fun.
Fun.
That's the thing. He, with Jazz and Jesus, we've been watching. It's hard to watch sometimes to see the same results every night with the Marlins. But when you're watching and you see, even in the down years, because that's what you're looking at. If you're the evaluators, if you're the Marlins front office, you're looking to see who's buying in, who's taking advantage, who's playing the 162. Because we anoint down here. If a guy has a good April, we're putting them in the Marlins Hall of Fame. And I'm looking to see who's on the field in September and who's performing in September. And I think the market will start being smarter when they start realizing those are the players you want. That, who's showing up. And I'm not saying you measure September stats because they can be misleading, much like spring training. Yeah. But you're looking for an attitude, and you're looking for a player that's going to bring that attitude every day. I always use this, Steve, because up in Tampa, it's the same thing as down here. I used to love going to the GCL or whatever. What now? It's Complex League now.
Yeah, the Florida Complex League.
They don't allow you back there anymore. Maybe someday again. But basically, when you can go back there and see guys playing at noon in Jupiter, Florida, on like August 15th, like if I didn't make a Marlins road trip or something like that, a leg of it, I'd go up there and I'd watch, and it'd be like 100 degrees with 100 degrees of humidity, and you're playing day after day, and it's just, nobody's there. There's no energy. It's stifling heat. I got a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds on these backfields, and I would turn to tell people, I'd say, these are when you find out who loves baseball.
Yep.
Because it ain't much fun back there. This isn't like going playing college, at Vanderbilt, winning a national title or whatnot, and going to College World Series, and then you go right to A-ball when you get out. You're on these backfields, hot as anything. You're in the fourth inning. The pitcher's not throwing a strike.
You're not making any money.
You're making no money, and maybe two guys on that field are going to be in the big leagues at some point. But you sit around and you see, and that's what I equate when you're going through what the Marlins are doing now. Yep. Who wants to win? Who wants to bring it every day, and who's tired of losing, and will just kind of bring that edge, that attitude that, hey, look, we're here for a collective purpose. So, and that's what I like about Jesus Sanchez. Obviously, if you hit the ball 470 feet and you get it good, you're going to laugh, you're going to bat flip. Yeah. But he brings that kind of fun energy, and with Jazz. And I know you took that photo the other day of Jazz. So speak to that, Steve. This is Jazz Chisholm.
Yeah, it was Sunday. The Rays had just finished off the sweep. Everybody was happy, and out by the backstop, where the camera well, right about where the camera well is, Jazz is out there signing autographs and taking pictures after the game in uniform. So he has not gone in, hasn't gone to take a shower. You've just been swept. You're getting ready. The bus is going to leave here, in whatever 60 or 75 minutes after the end of the game, and there's Jazz out there making sure that every kid that wanted an autograph got an autograph. Every kid that wanted a picture got a picture. Guys can be real salty after they've been swept, especially on getaway day. Guys don't want to do that, and Jazz is out there because he knows that's his responsibility. He's the guy that's out there going, you know what? I want to be the one when you say Miami Marlins and when things get good again, and they're going to get good again down in Miami. I have no doubt about that. But when they think about Miami Marlins, these kids are going to know, hey, Jazz Chisholm stayed after the game, took a picture with me, signed an autograph with a smile, and said thank you for coming out and seeing them play. I really, really like him. I've I had him on my fantasy team this year, so that kind of gave me a big plus. But when I saw, I was talking with somebody who was big into fantasy, and I was saying I could have Jose Ramirez or I could have Jazz Chisholm, and he said you better take Jazz Chisholm because he's already Jose Ramirez. So I was like, and you can get him a hell of a lot cheaper. So just the fun, the blue hair at the beginning of the year. I mean, we were like, who is this guy? This guy is brings so much of a joie de vivre. He's got such a fun outlook on life, and I think that can be very, very contagious in a clubhouse, and you can tell that when he's out there, guys are having fun out there.
He has that Jose Fernandez like charisma to him.
Yeah.
He's so much fun. He really is. I love him.
Speaking of fun, the playoff race that's happening right now in the AL, especially the wild card. Yesterday I was up until like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, scoreboard watching the Seattle game to see what was going on there, because I don't know, I want the madness of Seattle being like minus 50 run differential being in the playoffs. But what do you guys think? 4 teams all within one game. Boston and New York have the spots right now, but Seattle only a half game, Boston and Toronto only 1 game back. What do you guys feel of this playoff race coming down to the last week here?
Steve, take it. Yeah.
Can we have 4 American League teams finish 90 and 72 for the 2 wild card spots? I think that would be fantastic. That would be so much. The chaos breeds opportunity, and I think that it's going to be a lot of fun. If Seattle finds its way in to the playoffs, I think that Scott Service deserves a lot of votes for manager of the year, just because nobody expected Seattle to win 90 games. They expected Seattle to win 70 games, and so that's a team that if they get in, I know the Rays are not looking forward to seeing, because they played 7 times this year and Seattle won 6 of them. So that's a team that knows how to play the Tampa Bay Rays, and if they're the wild card winner, that's kind of scary. But it's going to be fun. That this next 5-6 days, getting all the way through the end of the weekend, it's going to be just an incredible look if we can get to 90 and 72 all the way across.
I think there's a scenario, I don't know if it still can happen, but there's a scenario where all 5 teams, Oakland had a chance.
They can't because Oakland can only be 89 and 73.
Oh, okay. So that ended yesterday then.
Yeah.
Because there is a chance where there is a 5-way tie, and I would have loved that.
Yeah, you want to talk about everybody in Park Avenue is just pulling their hair out. Manfred's going, "Oh my God, how the hell are we doing? How are we going to do this?" Because there's only 2 days in between the end of the season and the start of the wild card round. So I really do think that would have been chaos.
Yeah, Joe, where do you think this is going towards the last week?
I think Stanton is kind of just bullying the team, the Yankees, into one of those spots, and with what his homer yesterday on Trevor Richards is, I mean, you can't throw the ball closer to the ground, and you talk about not even putting a pitch anywhere he could hit it, and somehow.
And he's all arms.
He just golfs it, like 500 feet, and it's just as someone who personally likes Giancarlo very much, and rooting for him, and to make his critics kind of cringe a little bit. I'm really happy to see what he's doing, and he's lifting them. You wonder about Yankees pitching. Is it going to hold up? With Talion, he had his little setback yesterday. And so the Yankees I see in there. Boston, they kind of flipped, going to looking like a favorite to maybe on the outside looking in. I also like Toronto. I'm a big Bo Bichette guy, because we're all about Florida guys here. And then Seattle, I like Logan Gilbert, Florida guy who's a good rookie year. And Perry Hill's their infield and first base coach, and happy for Perry Hill. And Mike, did you see who got the save last night for Seattle? Did you happen to know?
No, I didn't. Who did
Bruce
got it?
Steckenrider, former Marlin. And good for Steck. They're kind of using a different closer every night, but man, that team is just single-handedly knocking Oakland out of there, which is interesting. Steve, how do you think it's ultimately going to go? Because it's probably going to be 2 AL East teams.
Yeah, my guess is it's going to be New York and Boston, only because Boston has a very easy schedule. They still have, with 5 games left, they're against the Orioles and the Nationals. So they've got a very, very easy schedule to go. whereas
Great
the
for
Yankees,
ratings.
the Yankees still have 2 more games. You know, they're going to play Toronto twice more, and they've got the Rays for 3 more games. I think that's going to be a very difficult stretch. So I tend to think that it is still going to be New York and Boston that get in, and Toronto ends up just on the outside looking in by maybe even as little as a game. I really do think that, you know, it's going to be those 3, and I don't see Seattle getting back into it, which is going to cost Scott Service some Manager of the Year votes to Kevin Cash, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think it's going to be Boston and New York, but I still hope Seattle. But Joe, I want to go back to what you were saying about Giancarlo. I want to ask you this. Is this his best surge of his career? I mean, we've seen this a lot from Giancarlo, where he would go like crazy for 3-4 weeks, where he looked like he's the best player in the world.
The MVP.
But is this doing it right now? Is this the best one he's had of his career?
I still go back. I think he's got 18 or so homers and 50 RBIs in August and September so far. In August of 17, I believe he had 18 homers in the month of August when he had 59 homers in his MVP year and finished with over 130 RBIs. Yeah, I mean, I want him to get to 100 RBIs. It didn't look realistic a couple of days ago, but if he's getting 4 a night, you know, he's knocking on the door. But he's the guy that, man, when he gets hot, he could go up 10 homers faster than anybody I think I've ever seen in a short stretch. But it's right up there. But that MVP season, people have to go look at that month of August, and even though the Marlins weren't really in it, they're kind of scratching to get to about 5 out or whatever it was that year. Stanton that year was the closest I saw Marlin, all my years, covered him every day, of being a national headliner. He was every night on SportsCenter was headlining, you know, he was doing something for that month, that stretch, and he's not quite doing it there now, but he's certainly getting there because he's New York, but he's sharing kind of the spotlight with Judge right now too. But it's really remarkable, and it's just a reminder that when he is basically on the field, he can tilt the field. He can so much, you know, and Steve sees him up in the press box.
Yep.
He's just a presence. Like you see all these little dots on the press box, and you see this really big dot, and that's Stanton. He just has a way. And I always like from the press box, look where the outfielders line up for when he's at bat compared to other guys. He just creates so much opportunity for himself because he hits the ball so hard so far. Yeah, it's fun to watch when he just dominates the sport.
Yeah, he is in a spot right now. I think it's close to the MVP year because, I think that he gets help this time around because he has Aaron Judge hitting there with him. And you want to talk about another big dot on the field? Yeah, Judge is just as big, if not bigger. I know he's taller and he's wider than Stanton, although Stanton can be a very wide individual. His shoulders, you know, I think you could rest Yankee Stadium on Giancarlo Stanton's shoulders. They're so big sometimes, you know. But you've seen what he's done here over the last week, and it's been all arm. Like every home run that he's hit, like I've seen him the grand slam in Boston on Saturday night. He stepped in the bucket, and it was just all arm getting the ball over the signs of the monster. He hit one on Friday night. He stepped in the bucket and put it in the bullpens, which are even further away than getting over the monster. Which I mean, just everything that he has done, like it just seems like he's not swinging well, but he's just hit everything hard. And Vladdy Guerrero is the same way. He's another guy that it doesn't matter what you're throwing, you could throw it on the ground, and he's going to hit it 117 miles an hour, and that's
Junior or the dad.
Well, I think Junior hits harder, but Senior is the one that's hitting stuff off the ground.
Yeah,
but you could put it down by his ankles.
Anything.
Yeah, but you could put stuff on up by his ankles, and Junior will still swing, and if he makes connection, he's going to hit it about 140 miles an hour.
So, Joe, you want to close this out the same way we always do? I mean, we already know what's going to happen in the AL East. The Rays won it, and two other teams from that division are going to probably make the playoffs, whether it's Toronto or Boston and New York. But in the NL East, Atlanta and Philly are having a showdown right now. Atlanta got game 1 last night to go up 2.5 on the division. where do you think that ends up? Or 3.5, I'm sorry, on the division. How does that end up for you? I was hoping for a Philly sweep to make it like very interesting, but it looks like Atlanta's gonna get away with this.
Yeah, for the excitement level, I don't care if the Braves win it because we kind of predicted them, but I was really kind of hoping the Phillies would take business, care of business last night, make the night even bigger, and make the final week. We like that the East is not. Steve, we've beaten it up all year. It's not been a good division, obviously. Everyone is kind of underperformed, and even the Braves not running away with it until kind of late, kind of made the somewhat interesting division, but. It would have been nice to see the Phillies, take that game just to make tonight a must-win game. But it looks like the Braves, if they're in such a good spot, they could lose the next two and really not lose that much going into the weekend. Yeah. And the pressure is you lose. And the other thing, when the Phillies are losing with Wheeler on the mound, that's the guy they need to win with. And you lose 2-1 in Atlanta, those losses tend to make themselves 2 losses. I could see the Braves kind of wrapping it up before the weekend, which I was kind of hoping the Phillies would have something to play for against the Marlins, just because you want to see the drama where there's something on the line, but that's where it wraps up. And then it'll be whether or not the Marlins or the Nationals finish last in the East. And I think, with Soto going for the MVP, that could give a little more incentive that maybe the Nationals win a couple of more games down the stretch as he tries to get some numbers to sway some voters.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you mentioned Soto with the MVP because a lot of people have totally discounted the Nationals and Soto in particular because of the fire sale that they had at the deadline, getting rid of Turner, getting rid of Scherzer, getting rid of Yan Gomes, getting rid of Harrison. All of the moves that they did to jettison guys for capital in the minor leagues. You forget that Juan Soto may have been the best hitter in the National League this year of anybody, and I know that Bryce Harper's had a huge year, and I know that there are other guys that you can make the case for in the National League, but Juan Soto has just been so good. For me, the reason why the Phillies are not going, it's not going to be even to the weekend. The Phillies had no bullpen. Has anybody seen Phillies bullpen this year? Any talent is on a milk carton in that town, and I feel bad because my friend Ellen Adair, who is on the Showtime show Billions and has done stuff has been on the CBS show Bull, a really great actress, but is a huge Phillies fan living in New York, and she's like, I was excited for at the beginning of the year because we were talking about Jose Alvarado, a guy that I know very well, and I was like, he's really talented, but he has no command and has no idea where his stuff is going. And if he ends up getting in trouble, he ends up eating his feelings. And there are times when it looks like Jose Alvarado in August ate Jose Alvarado in March. Because he can get kind of big. But I was like, if you don't have a bullpen, you're going to be in big trouble. And you look at what the Braves bullpen looks like, and especially with Will Smith playing the way that he's been playing, and the way the Phillies bullpen has been playing, you had a real good inkling early on this month that there was no way that the Phillies, even if they got close, weren't going to catch and pass.
Yeah, definitely. Joe, any last touch on the Phillies?
No, yeah. Again, for entertainment purposes, I was hoping they had put up there, but maybe they'll scratch out a game or two just to prolong the inevitable. But we do want to see that. We're really happy to have Steve on with us this week. Thanks for joining us, Steve. Hope to have you in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Mike, kind of tell everyone how they could follow us, remind about the 5 reasons, and let's kind of bring this one home, my friend.
Yeah, you guys can watch us. We're going to put this live on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube page, and now we'll be streamed live on the ManOn2nd Twitter page. That's new. Instead of my Twitter page, we'll be on the ManOn2nd Twitter page. And you can follow Steve at Steve Carney, as he said, very official.
Original.
Yeah, very original Twitter name. You can see how he got that one. But yeah, you can follow us all there, and you can follow us on Twitter at ManOn2nd. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and thank you again, Steve, for coming on.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. And Joe, it's always great seeing you, buddy.